While the missiles are flying in the Middle East, the real explosion isn't happening in Tehran. It's happening right now, at your local gas pump. As I stand here today, on March 9th, 2026, the world has officially tilted on its axis. We woke up to a number that should send a chill down the spine of every working American: $114 a barrel. In a single day of trading, oil prices didn't just rise, they leaped by 29%. That is the biggest single-day jump in the history of the modern world. I've spent the morning looking at the data, and let me tell you, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a market fluctuation. It was a strategy. We were told Operation Epic Fury, the joint US-Israeli strike that began on February 28th, would be a surgical strike. We were told the decapitation of the Iranian leadership and the death of Supreme Leader Khamenei would lead to a rapid collapse of the regime. President Trump took to social truth just hours ago to tell us this is a very small price to pay for world peace. He called anyone who worried about their wallet a fool, but tell that to the mother in Ohio who just saw the price of a gallon of regular hit $4.50 overnight. Tell that to the trucker in Texas who can no longer afford the diesel to finish his route. The epic fury we're seeing isn't just military, it's economic. The Strait of Hormuz, the jugular vein of the global energy market, has been effectively choked shut. 1/5 of the world's oil supply is currently trapped behind a wall of Iranian sea mines and drone swarms. The room where these decisions were made, the Situation Room, knew this would happen. They chose this path, and today you are the one picking up the tab. But what happens next is what should really keep you awake tonight, because $114 is just the beginning. To understand why your bank account is being drained, you have to look at a 21-mile-wide stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz. For decades, this has been the world's greatest vulnerability, and on March 2nd, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, did exactly what they've threatened to do for 40 years. They didn't just close the strait, they made it a graveyard for commercial shipping. As I speak, over 190 oil tankers are sitting idle, afraid to move. The IRGC has already struck the Stena imperative and the Safe and Prestige. Insurance companies have pulled all coverage. In the world of global trade, if you can't insure it, you don't ship it. This is a total blockade of 20 million barrels of oil per day. Imagine a world where 20% of all energy suddenly vanishes. That is the reality of March 2026. The Trump administration's response? They offered military escorts. But as we saw with the sinking of the tugboat assisting the Safe and Prestige on March 6th, even the US Navy can't stop every drone. The strategy was simple: hit Iran so hard they couldn't react. But the decapitation of Khamenei didn't end the war. It unleashed a leaderless, chaotic retaliation that is targeting the one thing the West cannot live without: crude. I've been watching the White House briefings, and the level of disconnect is staggering. They're talking about strategic victories, while the price of heating oil is up 60% this month. They are playing a high-stakes game of chess, but they're using your mortgage payment as the pawns. And the worst part, the people who built this house of cards are the only ones who can afford to see it fall. Let's talk about the man behind the curtain. President Trump has framed this conflict as a crusade for unconditional surrender. He wants a total victory over the nuclear threat. But let's look at the hero versus villain polarity here. On one side, you have the administration telling you this is about safety and peace. On the other, you have the reality of the American consumer being sacrificed at the altar of a legacy. Trump's Energy Secretary Chris Wright went on Fox News yesterday and called this a temporary blip, a weeks, not months situation. But I've talked to the analysts at Goldman Sachs, and they're telling a different story. They're saying that even if the war ended this second, it would take months to clear the mines and restore the flow. There is an arrogance in this administration that I haven't seen since the 1970s. It's the belief that the American economy is a $30 trillion beast that can absorb any amount of pain. They think you are resilient enough to handle $5 or $6 gas. But this isn't 2022, this is 2026. We are already reeling from the Project Volt tariffs and the internal legal battles over Kari Lake's VOA dismantling. The average family doesn't have a cushion anymore. The villain here isn't just the IRGC launching drones, it's the policy of escalation without a safety net. The US started Operation Epic Fury without coordinating with the G7 to release emergency reserves before the spike hit. They waited until the price hit $114 to start the meeting. That's not leadership, that's negligence. And the architects in DC are still drawing up plans for a wider conflict, while you're wondering if you can afford to drive to work tomorrow. I want to talk about the real heroes of this story. They aren't the ones in the cockpit of an F-35 over Tehran. The hero is the single dad in Michigan who just saw his commute costs double in a week. The hero is the small business owner in Indiana whose shipping costs are eating every cent of profit. These are the people who keep the country running, and they are the ones being hit by the collateral damage of this war. I received an email this morning from a viewer named Sarah. She's a home care nurse. She drives 60 miles a day to see patients. She told me, "I don't care about the nuclear program in Iran. I care that it now costs me 2 hours of my salary just to fill my tank to get to my first patient." That is the price of war reflection we need to have. The Trump administration calls this Americanness, the ability to sacrifice for a greater cause. But when was the last time a politician in DC sacrificed anything? Their tanks are always full. Their jets are always fueled by the taxpayer. The sacrifice is being offloaded onto the people who can least afford it. This whistleblower who leaked the internal DOJ assessments, the ones saying that a 20 million barrel deficit was a near certainty, they are a hero too. They tried to warn the administration that the surgical strike would be a financial chainsaw. They were ignored. We are being told to be patriots and swallow the cost. But true patriotism isn't blind obedience to a failing strategy. True patriotism is demanding that our leaders value the lives and the livelihoods of their own citizens as much as they value a military win. While the missiles fly, the world holds its breath. But for Sarah in Michigan, the world isn't holding its breath, it's tightening a noose around her bank account. If you think $114 is bad, I need you to listen very closely. Yesterday, a spokesperson for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard stood in the ruins of a Tehran command center and issued a direct warning to the United States: if you can tolerate oil at $200 per barrel, continue this game. $200 a barrel. At that price, the global economy doesn't just slow down, it stops. We're talking about $8 a gallon at the pump. We're talking about the total collapse of the airline industry. We're talking about food prices which rely on diesel for transport, skyrocketing to levels we haven't seen in our lifetime. The escalation isn't over. Iran has already threatened to target energy facilities in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait. They've already hit the Shahran oil depot. They are sending a message: if we can't sell our oil, no one will. I watched the response from the White House. They dismissed the $200 threat as desperate propaganda. But the markets don't think it's propaganda. That's why the price of West Texas Intermediate jumped 25% in hours. The tension in the Situation Room must be unbearable. On one hand, Trump wants unconditional surrender. On the other, the G7 is begging the US to de-escalate before the world enters a Great Depression 2.0. One party is visibly rattled, the energy-importing nations of Europe and Asia. They are watching their economies bleed out in real time. Meanwhile, the Trump administration remains composed, almost eerie in its calm, insisting that the destruction of the nuclear threat is worth any cost. But what happens when the mic drop isn't a clever line from a judge, but the sound of an entire nation's economy breaking under the weight of a war it didn't ask for? Today, the world began to fight back, not with missiles, but with the only weapon they have left: diplomacy and emergency reserves. The G7 finance ministers met in an emergency session this afternoon. For the first time in history, they are considering a coordinated release of petroleum reserves that would dwarf anything we saw during the Russia-Ukraine war. They are trying to break the fever of the market. They are trying to tell the speculators the oil is coming. But there's a problem. The Affidavit of Betrayal in the energy sector is that the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve is at its lowest level in decades. We used it to keep prices down in 2024 and 2025. We don't have the bullets left to fight this economic war. The hero in this act might actually be the international community. Countries like India and China are already signaling they will continue to buy Russian and Iranian oil through the shadow fleet to keep their people from starving, directly defying Trump's sanctions. This is the mic drop moments of the week. The world is looking at America and saying, "We cannot afford your war." I watched the lead US negotiator's face as he was told that Japan and South Korea, our closest allies, are seeing their stock markets slide by nearly 4% in a single day. Their confidence is crumbling. They realize that Operation Epic Fury didn't have a plan B for the global economy. The reveal is this: the US is becoming an island. We have the military power to flatten a nation, but we are losing the economic power to lead one. As the G7 meeting adjourned, the word recession was the only thing on anyone's lips. The aftermath of these strikes isn't a victory parade, it's a global wake. The ripple effect has hit social media like a tsunami. I'm seeing #gas shock 2026 trending everywhere. I'm seeing people posting videos of their receipts, $120, $150 to fill a SUV. The memes aren't funny anymore, they're angry. The social validation is shifting. A week ago, people were cheering for the strikes on Tehran. Today, the sentiment has flipped. The identity of the American voter is being tested. Are we warriors for democracy, or are we workers for survival? I saw a video from a farmer in Iowa that had 5 million views in 3 hours. He was standing in front of his tractor, crying. He said, "I voted for this administration because they promised me energy independence. But now I can't afford to plant my crop. Who is this war for?" The ripple effect is hitting the politicians too. Members of Congress who were chest-thumping about Operation Epic Fury last week are now reviewing the economic impact. They see the polls, they see the outrage. Even celebrities who usually stay in their lane are weighing in. I saw a major pop star post a simple photo of a $5 gas sign with the caption, "Who is winning? Because it's not us." This is how a movement starts. It starts when the pain in the wallet becomes greater than the pride in the flag. It starts when the audience begins to realize that they are the ones paying for the cinematic intensity of the evening news. The Trump administration is trying to spin this. They're saying the price will drop rapidly. But the internet doesn't believe in rapid drops anymore. We've been through too many blips that turned into permanent crises. The world held its breath for the war. Now it's holding its stomach for the recession. So what is the universal truth here? It's that dignity is not found in the destruction of others, it's found in the protection of our own. We have been sold a narrative that strength means the ability to launch 900 missiles in 12 hours. But true strength, the kind of strength that built this country, is the ability to maintain a society where a nurse can afford to drive to her patient and a farmer can afford to feed the world. The price of war isn't just a number on a screen, it's a moral choice. When we choose a military solution for a complex political problem, we are choosing to gamble with the lives of every person who relies on the global system. We need to reframe what it means to be a strong nation. A strong nation is one that protects the bank accounts of its citizens as fiercely as it protects its borders. A strong nation is one where justice and dignity are not just buzzwords used to sell a war, but realities lived at the kitchen table. The hero of this story, the nurse, the farmer, the whistleblower, reminds us of an Americanness that is being lost in the smoke of the Middle East. It's the Americanness of service, of community, and of common sense. We are being told to choose between victory and survival, but I believe that is a false choice. A real leader ensures that victory is survival. As we look at that $114 price tag, let it be a reminder, let it be a moral reflection. We cannot afford to be fools who ignore the cost of our convictions. We must demand a path that leads to peace without bankrupting the very people who make this country great. Dignity triumphs over arrogance every time, but only if we have the courage to stand up and say that our lives are worth more than a short-term blip. This is the reality of March 2026. This is the world that Operation Epic Fury has created. We've seen the lies exposed, we've seen the Affidavit of Betrayal in our energy policy, and now we are seeing the consequences. The question isn't whether the war will end. The question is, what will be left of our economy when it does? If you're tired of being told that your financial anxiety is a small price to pay, then I need you to join this movement. We are building a community that values truth over spin and people over power. Hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video with someone who is struggling at the pump today. Let them know they aren't alone and they aren't fools for being worried. We need to send a message to DC that the price of war is too high. Leave a comment below. Tell me what the gas prices are in your town today. Tell me how this $114 oil spike is affecting your family. I'm reading every single one of your stories because your stories are the real news. I'm your name, and I will never stop standing up for the heroes at the pump. Stay grounded, stay truthful, and remember, your voice is the only thing more powerful than a barrel of oil. I'll see you in the next one.